So 21 hours a day I sit on that bed. Now, I wouldn't be moaning. I don't want people to feel sorry for me, but if the injustice of it all is, this shouldn't be happening.
Look, I said what I said, which is that we do have, of course, a special relationship with our friends in the UK and also with some of our European allies.
You have the right to free speech in the UK, claimed Starmer to Trump and Vance. Meanwhile, people are being arrested for social media posts, silent prayers, and challenging government narratives. Does that sound like free speech to you?
Why shouldn't it be happening? Because that's mental torture. Google solitary confinement. It's a decision that that their own mental health teams in here have said will be...
Again, started attacking the free speech laws in the EU and the UK, which is not a part of the EU.
Tommy Robinson reveals the harsh reality of his 18-month sentence in solitary confinement. Limited family visits, restricted amenities, and constant surveillance. All while Starmer travels the world bragging about British freedoms. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favour. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now, back to the video.
Devastating for my mental health, yet the government are making the decision to hold me in these conditions for 9 months. I now have.
It's going to be the same outcome. It's the same thing that Democrats should learn, Democrats in leadership should learn right now, that it doesn't matter if we want to find common ground.
The UK has had free speech for a very, very long time. We're very proud of our history with free speech. These words flowed confidently from Keir Starmer's mouth during his recent meeting with Trump and Vice President Vance, as he sat there in his tailored suit projecting an image of British liberty to the world. Something rather inconvenient was happening back home. Tommy Robinson was sitting in solitary confinement at HMP Woodhill for the crime of speaking. The contrast couldn't be more stark. While the Prime Minister boasts about Britain's supposed free speech credentials on the international stage, Robinson spends 22 hours a day locked in isolation.
The Attorney General has now invoiced me. They sentenced me to 18 months, put me on solitary confinement, and now they've charged me £81,000.
Security Conference, Vice President Vance condemned free speech violations in the UK. Particularly, could you respond? What is your...
He's limited to eating tinned food, restricted from normal family visits, and subjected to conditions typically reserved for the most dangerous offenders in the prison system. All this for a contempt of court charge. Let's be crystal clear about the reality Robinson is facing. HMP Woodhill isn't just any prison, it's a high-security facility, normally housing murderers and terrorists. The question we should all be asking is, why place someone convicted of contempt of court in such extreme conditions? The severity of his treatment reveals something far more concerning than a simple legal punishment. It hints at political motivation.
They want me to pay by the 7th of January. Well, guess what? I face another contempt of court case. But I'm not a criminal offender. I'm a civil offender, so I shouldn't even be in it.
Appearance at a conservative gathering outside Washington, linking the country's limits against hate speech to American troops stationed there.
The cracks in Starmer's free speech facade widened further when Vance confronted him directly about Britain's troubling pattern of arresting citizens for social media posts. Vance didn't mince words, pointing to numerous examples where British citizens faced legal consequences for expressing opinions online, something that would be protected under America's First Amendment. One of the most disturbing cases is that of Adam Smith Connor, a British Army veteran who was actually fined for silently praying outside an abortion clinic in Birmingham. Let that sink in. A man punished by the British government for the thoughts in his own head. When the state starts policing prayer, we've crossed a dangerous threshold that no democratic society should approach. These aren't isolated incidents either.
But also affect American technology companies and by extension American citizens. So that is something that we'll talk about today at lunch.
He was Emmanuel Macroned by another world leader, Keir Starmer in this case, the Prime Minister of Great Britain.
Under Starmer's leadership, the UK has seen a concerning rise in cases where speech is criminalised. Isabel Vaughan Spruce was arrested twice for the same offence, praying silently near a clinic. Caroline Farrow faced police investigation for using the wrong pronoun in a Twitter debate. The list goes on, creating a chilling effect where citizens increasingly self-censor out of fear. Robinson's case fits within this broader pattern of speech suppression. When you look at what actually got him imprisoned, The disconnect between Starmer's international bragging and domestic reality becomes impossible to ignore. Robinson was jailed for allegedly breaching reporting restrictions by live streaming outside a courthouse during a grooming gang trial, reporting on cases that many believe weren't receiving adequate mainstream coverage. The significance of Starmer's claims being challenged on the international stage cannot be overstated. It marks a moment where Britain's self-image as a beacon of liberal democracy collided with uncomfortable questions about its actual practices.
What day is it today? It's Thursday. My routine tomorrow, Friday. At 8:30, because people say, yeah, I've got the gym. I have got the gym. So at 8:30 in the morning, I'll get
Well, no, I mean, certainly we wouldn't want to reach across US citizens, and we don't, and that's absolutely right.
The embarrassment was palpable, and rightfully so. How can a nation claim to cherish free expression while implementing some of the strictest speech controls in the Western world?
Why not? And what's the difference? See, when I got sentenced in Belmarsh, when I got to prison, everyone who goes to jail now, because the prisons are...
But in relation to free speech in the UK, I'm very proud of our history there.
What makes this contradiction particularly troubling is that it's happening under a government that presents itself as progressive and liberty-minded. The same administration that speaks about protecting democratic values is simultaneously expanding police powers to monitor and punish speech. This hypocrisy threatens the very foundation of what makes a free society function: the ability of citizens to express dissenting views without fear of state persecution. The gap between Starmer's words and Robinson's reality represents a dangerous precedent. When political leaders can comfortably make claims that so drastically contradict the lived experience of their citizens, we've entered territory where truth itself becomes malleable. It creates a society where official narratives supersede factual reality, and questioning those narratives becomes increasingly risky.
Again, started attacking the free speech laws in the EU and the UK, which is not a part of the EU.
You go to for committing civil offences. Yeah, I'm shipped to a maximum security jail housing the worst Muslim gangs and jihadists in the country.
The widening chasm between Starmer's lofty rhetoric and the actual state of free expression in Britain is creating a nation of self-censors. This isn't merely theoretical, it's happening right now as ordinary Britons increasingly bite their tongues rather than risk legal consequences for speaking their minds. While the government proudly declares its commitment to freedom abroad, free speech advocates are demanding urgent reforms to laws that systematically silence dissent. What's truly at stake extends far beyond Tommy Robinson's individual circumstances. His situation serves as a stark warning about the trajectory of expression rights throughout the country. These advocates argue that no one should ever fear legal repercussions simply for voicing opinions, and that Britain must restore the fundamental right to question, challenge, and criticise without persecution. As Starmer continues peddling this sanitised version of British freedoms on the international stage, we're left wondering, is he protecting the freedom of all citizens, or merely preserving the government's freedom to determine which voices deserve to be heard?